Yay! Perfectly in sync and in tune.
It's almost like we practiced it 274 times.
What is up, everyone? Welcome to Ginger Runner Live, episode number 275. Probably one of our biggest episodes tonight. We apologize about the little bit of delay. My fault. I'll take the blame. Even though Courtney's like,
no,
blame me.
It was 100% your fault.
It was 100% my fault. I will not throw our guest under the bus like that. Our guest tonight, Courtney Dauwalter, like one of the biggest names in ultra running, fresh off of a victory at the UTMB 2019. And we have a lot to catch up on because it's been a while since we've had her on the show. And we got to catch up on States, the injury that she got at States, which I believe is one of her first real injuries that she's had to deal with, the recovery from that and how she managed to turn her game around and get ready for UTMB and then just go crush UTMB like it was nothing. I'm sure it was much more than nothing. But I can't wait to talk to our guest tonight.
Yes.
So sit back, relax, everyone. Welcome to Ginger Runner Live, episode number 275. The show begins now. Ginger Runner. Yay!
I almost left you hanging.
I
thought about it.
You almost did, but we managed to get out unscathed. Welcome, everyone, to Ginger Runner Live, episode number 275. Thank you for taking some time out of your busy Mondays to spend a little bit of it with us. Very exciting show tonight. I know I say that every episode. I've said that 274 times before this.
But this is like a very, very exciting episode. Yeah. If there's one person in the ultra running world that gets me like, it's our guest tonight.
We're going to make a gif out of that. There's no doubt. She is one of the most exciting names in ultra running. She just came off one of the toughest distance events out there, UTMB, by winning the damn thing. She is looked up to by athletes beyond our sport. She's just an incredible ambassador for ultra running, the sport of running, and so much more. She's fantastic. Our guest tonight, Courtney Dauwalter, will be joining us in just a second. So much to catch up on with this interview tonight, too, because she was leading Western States, unfortunately had an injury sustained there. We're going to find out about that, recovering from that, the transition into training back to UTMB, how she did it, and how she managed to step up on the biggest stage in the world and dominate. Great conversation tonight. I can't wait.
Yes.
I am not the only one here in the interview room. We also have the wonderful Kim.
What's up, you guys? Kim Tashima Newberry here. I'll be keeping an eye in the chat room. For those of you who are new, some of you guys have said, this is my first live show. Very, very exciting. Welcome. We will have Courtney live with us. So if you guys do have questions for Courtney, please pop them in the chat room.
Yes.
Lots of conversation happening already in there. A lot of people are really excited.
Yeah. You know, one thing that's really cool and unique about the show is that it is live. If you have questions for Courtney, we get to ask them of her here tonight, right now. So jump into the chat room. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And very active tonight. I knew it was going to happen. Every time we have Courtney on, our chat room just goes nuts, which is great. We welcome it all. But before we introduce our wonderful guest tonight, we do have some individuals that we like to thank at the top of every Ginger Runner Live. They are the reason that we're able to do this full time. And those are our Patreon subscribers. If you go to patreon.com/thegingerrunner for as little as $1 a month, you get to support everything we do here, help keep the lights on, the mics hot. We're doing live shows every Monday. We have for the last 5.5, almost 6 years. We do reviews every week. We do films, all sorts of really fun content on this channel. And it is because of them that we're able to do it. 3 individuals in particular at that top tier. Chris Lee. Chris Lee in Hong Kong has a great organization called Trailblazer. They showcase a lot of the trails in the Hong Kong region. He and I have been talking a lot in the last couple of months. They're obviously going through some crazy political times in Hong Kong, but he is safe. His family is safe. And it's really interesting to sort of talk to him about trail running whilst all this is going on. It's a fascinating conversation, but he is just a wonderful human. So big shout out to Chris. Rick Bjarnason and his team at Cheeky Monkey Media. .ca. They are a web design company. They redid the gingerrunner.com website. You can go check it out right now. But Rick is also an ultra runner, just ran Sinister 7, one of Canada's hardest ultra marathons. Big shout out to Rick. And finally, Brian Sands, longtime supporter, longtime viewer, has an incredible journey himself, losing over 100 pounds, running his first marathon, his first 50K, training now for Javelina. Like he's an incredibly inspiring human, and it's just awesome to have him on board. So big shout out to those 3 individuals and our Patreon crew. Without further ado, I think it's time to introduce our wonderful guest. She's coming to us all the way from I'm guessing she's in Colorado because she just ran another race this last weekend.
Just casual.
Just casual. The one and only Courtney Dauwalter.
Yay!
Yay!
Well, that's it. That's our show. We appreciate you. We love having you on the show, Courtney, because we always tell our guests, like, it's casual. You know, our show it's super laid back. We like to drink beer while we're on it and stuff. And I feel like you're one of the guests that we look forward to the most because you have so much fun, I think, just generally in life, that it's so great for us as interviewers to have you on as a guest because you're so easy to interview and talk to. Have other podcast hosts sucked up to you as much as we have? You don't have
It's
to answer
great
that.
to see you guys. Thanks
You
for
too.
having me on.
So you ran
cheers?
another race. Oh yeah, cheers. Of course.
Thank you.
Start the show with a good cheers. Is it true that you ran another race this last weekend?
No, I mean, I participated in the event, yes. But it was just, the timing was perfect. I was down in Durango in Southwest Colorado and got to then take part in the Imogene Pass Run, which is kind of a classic. It runs from Ouray over to Telluride, up and over Imogene Pass. So it was a really cool experience, and I was mostly just enjoying and sightseeing and grazing all the aid station cookies.
I think one of my
that's me when I race.
that's me when I volunteer. I think one of my favorite pictures from the event was one that you posted or Maggie Gooderl posted of you just enjoying the nachos post race. Like that to me was like, I want to run the race just for the nachos.
There we go. See you there next year.
That's it. Sold. Let's go back in time a little bit because you've had quite the eventful summer, let alone year. But leading into this summer, you were preparing and ready to execute at Western States. Tell us a little bit about how that race unfolded, because I know that we witnessed a lot of it in person out there, and it was exciting and emotional, and there was a lot that took place. So how did that end up unfolding for you?
Yeah, thanks for being out there. That was cool to see you guys. Kind of even rewinding farther than that, my summer didn't really have Western States in it. It was going to be more revolved around Hard Rock. And then Hard Rock 100 got canceled.
Right.
So then, we headed to California and had a blast during the race until about mile 66. And then I stopped at an aid station. Cal 1 is right there. And my hip just gave out there. So unfortunately, I didn't get to finish all of those last miles of it. But yeah,
it was,
right?
I mean, that's the thing is, as a spectator of the sport and a fan of the sport, you know, we're all rooting for whoever's in front. Like, that's what's kind of cool about ultra running is whoever finds themselves in front. It's like, oh, I really want blank to win. And when you took over and we're running, we were waiting at Green Gate expecting to see Courtney climb up the hill first. And it turned out that Claire was coming up the hill, and it had just happened. Like, the pass had just happened. What was going through your mind at that point when you're basically dealing with the hip kind of out of nowhere? You're also dealing with the race environment. Where is your mind at in that sort of scenario?
Yeah, so the hip went out at Cal 1, and between Cal 1 and Cal 2, I don't know, it's like a 5-mile section or something. I was with my husband who was pacing me, and we were trying to still problem solve and get it running and kind of forcing it. But it was buckling under me, and like I was screaming out in pain each time, which my husband was like, "What's going on?" Like, I don't think he'd ever seen me like that before. So by the time we reached Cal 2, we walked every step. Like, there was no more running. So we made it to the river. We talked to the medical people there and tried to, like, are there any quick fixes that we haven't thought of out on the trail that you could help us with? He tried some tape, but we crossed over the river then and hiked it up to Green Gate, and it was like, this is no longer a race for me. It's just deciding to walk in the last 20 miles to finish what I started, or drop at Green Gate because we didn't know what the injury was and we wanted to prevent anything from getting worse. So by the time Claire came by, I mean, we were just kind of chatting and trying to, enjoy this time and what was happening, like this is the situation. We can't fix it. So let's have at least a little bit of fun with hanging out together. And seeing her fly by was so cool. She was awesome. And we also got to see second and third go by as we were hiking up to Green Gate. So it was fun. It was cool to get to witness that part of the race.
It's a unique and very fresh and awesome perspective to hear from the person who was in first place, take on an injury, scream in pain, and try to figure out, triage that. Like, how do I solve this problem, which is a big part of the sport, but then turn that into positive energy for other people. Like, that's such a cool, unique thing. Was there a point in your brain that went, my race is over, now it's time to support other people? Or was it just constantly trying to figure out what was going on with the hip? Like, were you thinking long outside of states, or were you thinking in this moment now support other people? Or like, what was the dynamic in your brain at that point, that inner conversation?
Yeah, I don't really recall. I think by the time we reached Cal 3, which I'm sorry, I don't remember the exact mileage of all of those, but we finally, my husband and I, like, said aloud the idea, like, maybe I can't finish it, because before that we had been, just, let's fix it. Can we get it running? And a few times I was able to, like, force a altered stride on it and, like, kind of grind my teeth down to little nubbins as I was running on it. And then once we had that going a few times, we were like, well, maybe we just don't stop again. Like, don't stop at any of the aid stations.
Oh, wow.
And we're just going to, like, bite on a stick or whatever, had to make it happen. But by the time we reached Cal 3 and, like, said it aloud that here's the reality of the situation, then it became more apparent that it was no longer, I wasn't racing anymore. I was just, moving forward to the next spot and then deciding if I should move forward again.
Had you ever experienced anything like this before? I know we mentioned a little bit in the pre-show, but any injury or anything mid-race or any pain of this level?
Nothing like that.
I can't, I can't even imagine someone at your level who competes at the highest caliber and in races and distances that far exceed 100-mile distance, and to have something like that pop up. I can imagine there's lots of questions that fly through your head. Before we move on, go ahead.
Is it super dark?
That's better. No, that's okay. That's better. Yeah. Little kitchen light action.
Yeah.
We're gonna get a full tour of Courtney's house by the end of the
We're not cooking, but
are we gonna get a cooking demo?
How does Courtney make the mashed potatoes? That's what everyone wants to know. Let's get to some of our live viewer questions. What we got?
Yeah, tons of great questions rolling in. And you guys, if you asked a question and I don't ask it, just please ask it again, because the chat room's rolling by pretty quickly right now. So great question from Nathaniel. Nathaniel asks, do you think your Western States setback helped keep you fresh for UTMB?
It's impossible to predict what would have happened if I had finished Western States. But I do think that, right now I feel pretty lucky that it happened, because I got then hooked into a really great physical therapist who has been teaching me some of that detail work that I've just been neglecting over the years, like focusing on, my hips and some mobility stuff and just some of those activation exercises to make sure everything's running smoothly, all the gears are turning. So I think big picture, I'm fine with it, because now I've got, some new tools that I can use to keep my body healthy moving forward, and hopefully can build off of that.
No doubt. Go ahead.
Another great question from Nathaniel. Nathaniel says, you said in an interview, you refuse to give my physical pain any value. I shove the pain aside, focus on something different, and force myself to keep moving. How do you set that aside?
Yeah, it was really hard and a strange thing to have this type of pain that I couldn't do that with. But then it was just an indication for me that this is different and that I need to listen to it. So staying in tune with my body and when it's the difference between an injury versus, just discomfort from racing.
Go ahead.
Let's see. Great question from Ramesh. Ramesh asked, Courtney, what will you say to runners who are just starting to run?
Keep going. You can do it. I think patience and consistency are the biggest things. You've got to build slowly and be patient when it doesn't, happen overnight, and then be consistent and just getting out the door and putting in the work every day.
So I want to talk a little bit about this injury. When you and your husband, well, specifically when you made the decision that you weren't going to finish the race, did you and your husband have the conversation of like, what's next? Is it, do you leave the course? Do you stay at an aid station and wait for the other runners to come in? Are you like giving yourself time to maybe heal so you can continue and maybe finish the race? Like, what is that conversation happening at Green Gate? Because I imagine that's where a lot of that started to happen.
Yeah, totally. We got to Green Gate and the rest of my crew was there as well. So my parents were in town and then some good friends of ours, and everyone was waiting at Green Gate because I was going to trade pacers there.
Got it.
So we got there and had basically like a team huddle of assessing the situation and kind of describing what was happening. And my last pacer was going to bring me all the way to the finish from there, and he was ready and willing to walk 20 miles with me if that's what I decided I wanted to do with my race. But kind of just not knowing what it was and having this be the first injury that I've really had like take me down like that.
Yeah.
I didn't, you hear so many things about bone injuries or all sorts of things that you can just make worse if you keep walking and running on it. So not having all the information, we decided to call it there in order to prevent further injury from happening. And crews have to walk a long way down to Green Gate.
Yeah.
That's not the spot to stop.
We kind of remembered that this year, every once in a while, or whenever we're at Green Gate, we go, why do we keep coming back to Green Gate? Because it is like a 1.5 mile walk down. It's all downhill. But who are we to complain when runners are out there at mile 60 or 70 or 80 with a hip injury? Okay, so at this point, at least winning Western States is over. You're stepping out to heal the body. What is your first order? I mean, again, first injury like this. What's the first order of business when you get back home? Is it have you dealt with a PT before? Have you dealt with anything like the procedure to get back to health before? What was that whole process like, and how'd you figure out what it was?
Yeah, there's a physical therapist here in Golden that I got connected with and went and saw them almost immediately when I had gotten home. Mm-hmm. And they had a really great team there where one of the physical therapists is just a hip specialist. So hips are his thing. He knows the ins and outs. And another guy I was working with there is an ultra runner. So it made like what I do a little like less crazy to the hip guy,
Most assessments are, why don't you just stop running? That'll solve it. It's like, that's not going to happen.
So it was the perfect combination. And I worked with them for the past couple of months, and they helped me diagnose it and then start to work through the stages of like building it back up, rehabbing it, and moving forward so that I could race again.
Was racing on the plan at this point, or was it health first? All these other races that I'm signed up for. I mean, did you even know about Hard Rock cancellation at this point in the recovery? And was UTMB even something that you were going to consider?
Yeah, so Hard Rock had already been canceled early June. So I knew that before Western States. And basically, I had 2 months when I went to see them until I was signed up to do one of the races over during UTMB week. And I told them that from the get-go, like, this is the ultimate goal. Like, here's our timeline if possible. But really, like, let's just get this thing healthy and make sure it can be, good for the big picture, not just this summer. So
were they able to rule out like any stress fractures or any of that stuff early on?
Yep. Yeah, I got some scans done to find out that it wasn't bone, and then we were able to move forward a little more aggressively, and kind of knew which direction then to go with all the rehab stuff.
And did it immediately start coming back to life, or was it a slow process to get that thing moving and pain-free?
Oh, it was so slow. I think it took forever. But I know I'm pretty lucky because it wasn't that slow in the grand scheme. But it took probably a whole month before I could run like a 5-mile run without any pain during it. And even then, to run 2 days in a row was really tricky. So doing a 5-mile run, then the next day I'd just have to be on the bike. And slowly we were able to then build up the distance of that one run by itself. And then eventually we were able to put 2 in a row together. And from there, it kind of dominoed. Like, it seemed like once we were able to string together a couple days, then it became a lot easier to keep adding miles and still feel no pain. But I was like, we're probably a couple weeks out from UTMB, and I'm like, so I haven't really been having pain. Do I have a green light yet? And they're like, no green light for you.
Oh, man.
My first green light of the past couple months was at the start line of UTMB. They're like, now you have a green light.
Are you on a cell phone with your PT, like at the start line? The music's playing in the background?
And he just sends a green light picture. Yeah. No, they were just wanting me to not like get carried away with trying to cram in training because I was feeling so underprepared for a race like UTMB.
Right. Yeah, I might have you
rotate. Weird.
It's
like
all the backlight.
I'm sorry.
Oh, it's okay. It's just the bright kitchen lights behind you. Are you able to rotate like 180?
To be away from them?
There we go. All right. When the lights are behind you, that's actually pretty good because I think you're under a kitchen light. That's great.
Ooh, now I have a halo too.
Yeah, perfect.
While we have Courtney live, of course, we have live questions, a live chat room. Jump in there if you haven't already. Kim's pulled a bunch aside already. Go ahead.
Yeah, another great question here. So since 2017, you've won 14 out of 21 races entered in the U.S. 6 of those were outright victories. The shortest outright victory was a 50-kilometer race, while the longest was Moab 240. Having dominated both short and long-distance races, some commentators have begun speculating that you are the greatest of all time. What do you think of your impact on the sport?
Thank you to that person.
It was me. I wrote it.
Oh, I'm like, that's a lot of research. I feel so lucky to be in a sport like this where, there's so many different types of races and so many people from all walks of life, challenging themselves in this way. So I'm enjoying it and, having a lot of fun challenging myself to see what I can do.
Have you had any interactions with fans or people who look up to you in like a really positive way? Like any stories that you've been told that have made you realize just how much impact you have on the sport and a much larger community? I don't have to put you on the spot. I'm like, what's the one story that someone has told you that made you remember this? Does it happen? Do people come up to you? Do you get approached often though with people just telling you how you've changed or shaped how they run or if they've joined the sport?
I think it's so cool. Social media is crazy, but also so special in how you can connect with the world, right? Wherever you are. And so I've really enjoyed getting to hear people's stories through all the different ways that I've been able to meet them.
I want to start talking about UTMB because this is a race that's fascinated me for years, and so many friends have run it and told me horror stories about it. It would just be really difficult and obviously very rugged mountain race, unlike anything that we really have in the States. So you're towing the line of a race that maybe you haven't had the best preparation for this year because of the injury. Is there anything going through your head as far as nerves, doubt, fear? Do you deal with any of those things with a resume like yours? Do you even have those thoughts in your head?
Yeah, I mean, I was pretty intimidated by the race just because there's so many people, and it's a lot of climbing. It's a huge 100-mile race. So I didn't know how it was going to go, but I knew that I wanted to at least put my hat in it and see, like, if I try and race this and blow up because, I'm unprepared, or because my injury, or because, something happens like they always do in ultras, then that's how it is. But I at least want to know that I gave it everything I could from the start, just to see how that shook out. So standing at the start line was insane. It's so packed, and there's like music blaring and just people everywhere. I got to share that start line though with Casey, who's here, I believe. Hey,
yep,
Casey.
Yeah, she's in the chat room.
Thanks for sharing that. And like Rory and I were standing by each other, and Mimi Kotka. So it was like calming in that I was surrounded by people that were like, I could joke and laugh with, and we're like, well, let's just have a good time. But also so intimidating, knowing what was ahead, and then just the atmosphere of that start line. It's crazy.
We know it through videos and that sort of thing. I know that they play a lot of Vangelis music, a lot of that big string orchestra dramatic music, and there's a shit ton of people out there cheering you on, spectators and stuff throughout the course. Being who you are, having the resume that you have, all the wins, and a lot of really great experiences at the longer distance and short distance alike, did you have any strategy here at all? Is there any thoughts going through your mind of like, I could take this? Or is it all, I have no idea what could happen because my hip is finally better. I got the green light on my cell phone 2 minutes ago. Like, is there anything, any competitive inkling in your head? Or is it all just, let's just see what happens?
Well, I think kind of both of those, but I would say that's how it always is anyways. 100 miles, any ultra, really, you don't know what's going to happen out there. So it's always like, let's see what happens. And then I also like to compete. So it was, let's see what happens if I try and compete in this sort of field at this race. But I didn't have a strategy, and I didn't have like paces, or I didn't know anything about how the timing was going to all roll out. I was just going to push the gas pedal down basically and try and hold it as long as I could.
I freaking love that so much.
You should definitely do that at your 100 next weekend.
Oh yeah, I'm 5 days away
Just right on the gas from the start.
From Headland 100. And so yeah, I'm going to take that strategy. I'm going to go 100% from the start.
Well,
it'll turn out just fine.
I'm going to get my ass kicked so hard. 5 miles in, I can't do this. I'm done. Again, we're live. We've got Courtney Dauwalter. Let's get some of these live questions. We've got a lot.
First, just a comment from Casey in the chat room. Casey says, Courtney, I work with people who know who you are, and they are by no means runners. You inspire more than just runners. Keep being you. We all love you.
Thanks, Casey. Same to you.
And then Nathaniel in the chat room says, many runners have said for an American to win UTMB, they must become familiar with the course. You towed the line with no prior course experience. Did the unfamiliarity help or hinder you?
I mean, for sure, knowing the course can be helpful. But I don't mind not knowing the course because I don't usually have a strategy. So if you're just pushing the gas pedal down, it doesn't really matter what it does.
We need to get a shirt made up.
Yeah.
There's so many things I want to find out more about, because this race has a lot of logistics. There's a lot of things that come into play when traveling international, like food and all the things that maybe are outside of your control at an aid station and that sort of thing. Did you, knowing that you were going to arrive at UTMB probably later than you anticipated? Were you able to get logistics together, a crew together, get your food to your crew? What were you going to eat and that sort of thing? Like all those logistics, were they able to get put into place in time? Or were you in Chamonix like, we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Hopefully they've got stuff for me.
No, luckily, we were able, we had friends who were going as well. And when I did get injured, they were just like, well, if you don't end up racing, then we'll just be in Europe. So what's the worst thing
awesome.
about that? Yeah. And then my husband was there. So all the logistics and things about that worked out really smoothly. And we didn't get there too far in advance of the race, but the start time being as weird as it is, I think makes it so jet lag doesn't matter really as much. It's a 6 p.m. start, so everyone is like all thrown off anyways, and you're going to be awake for 24 hours plus anyways, so everyone's going to get tired at some point. So we just didn't really worry about that part.
Are you a morning person or a night person? Like, is a 6 p.m. start for you? Well, Euro time, so it could be a morning start, but are you the afternoon runner or are you the morning runner?
I'm a morning runner.
So I
thought it was cool to get to do the night in the first part. I mean, the sun comes up and you've already covered a whole lot of ground, and then you get to be greeted by the daylight and turn your headlamp off. So it's kind of a cool switch from the normal 100-mile setup where you're finishing in the dark, and that's when you're struggling the most too. So it's all just kind of like, blown up in how difficult it can be. And this was cool to get the night done first.
It was a crazy year for American runners. We had lots of runners suffer some terrible fate in the race. I mean, Casey is a perfect example, took a pretty bad spill and fell down a cliff, took a hit to the face and stuff like that. Casey, obviously, I know there's some stories there that we'll want to hear about on the show for sure. Do you know about these things as they're playing out? Is your crew giving you updates as to standings or where you are in the mix, or is it 100% focused on your race?
I didn't know much about what was happening. I did eventually find out that I was running in second. So I knew there was one woman in front of me, but I didn't know how close people were back or what was happening in the field really anywhere, except that there was one somewhere in front of me. Yeah.
And does that fuel you in this event, or are you still like, I'm going to keep going my own pace. I'm just going to hold out and just get this thing done. My hip is working, so let's keep it that way.
I mean, when I race, I'm just kind of gauging off of how I feel and what pace feels good. So even just knowing I was running in second, I still was holding the same thing, and I'm hoping that maybe eventually that would get me to this person in front of me. Right. But you never know. I mean, if someone's blasting off the front and they have an amazing day, like the men's winner, Pau Capel, threw together. Yeah. I mean, he was running by himself the whole day. So
the whole day.
Yeah. So you never know. And there's things you can't control. And I was just doing what I could each of those miles as efficiently as possible and seeing what happened.
Let's get to some more live questions.
Yeah, a question from Deb in the chat room. Deb asks, Courtney, the live coverage at UTMB was unprecedented. As a front runner, did you find it hard to have the cameras on you as much, especially as you were suffering?
Yeah, I'm sorry you guys had to watch that. It was crazy. I mean, I wouldn't choose to have that all the time for sure. But I mean, it's a unique event. And so just being a part of it in that way was pretty cool. I did have moments where I was like, well, when do I get to stop and go to the bathroom? There's
right.
Just a camera. Like anytime I stopped, you would still scan to watch me. I'm like, dude.
That's a great point.
It's a great point. Like, I think we kind of forget the fact that, yes, we're following our heroes in these races, and the coverage of this event specifically is like, we're going to cover the lead athletes the entire time. There's not going to be a second that they're not going to be on camera. As a media creator myself, I am so sorry, Courtney, that you had to deal with that. Like, what an internal dialogue to have of like, I just need to pee. Like, this guy is going to film me. And is this part of it? A part of me is like, as a dude, I'd just be like, just go and just let the world like watch. But then I'm like, no, my God, that'd be terrible. That'd be awful. I'm so sorry you had to go through that.
No, it's cool. I mean, they've got such a great system there for people to spectate from all over the world. So I think it's really awesome in that way. Yeah. And cool to be a part of, even if it was like something I wouldn't choose to have every run that I go on.
So give the runners like a yellow card, like you just pull it out and it's like, cameraman.
Give me a minute.
Yeah. Here's 2 yellow cards. Give me a couple minutes. Let's get to some more of these live questions.
Yeah, a question from Kim Wrinkle in the chat room. Kim asked, Courtney, you mentioned on Instagram a new section of my pain cave. What was the most painful overall experience at UTMB?
I just basically sunk into a dark hole at around mile 75 or 70 even. And was just chiseling away at the pain cave then for 30 miles. And that had a lot of climbing there at the end. So I think a lot of people got to witness some of my most painful moments because the last climb took me forever. I wasn't sure if I was moving forward at some points. My legs were just heavy. And I think I was undertrained and unprepared for it. And then it caught up to me and showed itself then in the last 30 miles. But
what does that look like in like Courtney's brain at that point? Is it negative self-chatter? Is it all physical, nutrition? Like, what does that deep pain cave look like for you?
Yeah, kind of all of that. And so then trying to just control the things I can control, like the what I'm telling myself or the thoughts that I'm letting stick in my brain. That's basically the only thing that you can do at that point is try and keep yourself moving forward. So it became very tunnel visioned on just the next step forward, basically for the last 30 miles.
And is that a place that you've had to, I remember hitting those spots in longer runs, and it's easy to get overwhelmed by the negative things of like, just stop, take a break, or sit down, or lay down, or food's not going to help, or nothing's going to help. So there's all these things are trying to get you to stop what you're doing, to preserve what you're doing, and your body and your mind and everything. Is it trained? Are you training yourself in all of these long runs every time you hit those places to like dig yourself out? Are you proving to yourself that you're capable of getting out of them? Is it just being patient? Like, what are the mantras or whatever that you're able to use to get out of them? Because that's probably the most common thing that all of our viewers and listeners will get to, is that pain cave, that dark place.
Yeah, for sure. I think when I'm in it, I'm just trying to frame it as now it's pretty special to go to the pain cave. It means like you're doing something pretty sweet. And so I try and keep that in mind, as hard as it is to have that sort of thought when you're in it.
Yeah.
And also to keep in mind that it can be like a really productive place of just gathering evidence for future races and future challenges, because everything you're experiencing during those moments in the pain cave, you can then recall the next time you go there and remind yourself, like, you're fine. You've been through this before. You can keep on staying in this place and it's going to be okay.
Did the hip ever bug you?
A little bit, yeah, but that's okay.
Does it take you out of your game? I guess what I'm trying to say is, at any point, did you find yourself focusing on it more than you would normally? And did it give you any cause or pause for concern?
Yeah, I was trying to be aware of it so that I didn't, run myself into another injury that would take me out for a while. But also to remember that 100 miles and everything's going to be hurting a little bit. So just because my hip was hurting didn't mean it was like all the red flags are going up. It was mostly kind of in and out of just like reminding me that it had been there and that it was there. But it was never like buckling my leg or the intense pain that I experienced at Western States. So it felt like all good still. This course also played into my favor in that way, in that it changes terrain all the time. So there's not like huge amounts of downhill in a row, which the downhills were what were kind of aggravating it a lot at Western States.
Right.
Every time there was a big downhill at UTMB, you then got to switch into hiking for a long time up a mountain. So that helped a lot, I think.
Let's get to more of those live questions.
Yeah, a question from Janice in the chat room. Janice says, Courtney, you're incredibly humble and laid back. How do you balance your don't overthink it mindset with your fierce competitive ability?
I think they can be in the same place at the same time. I think you can be really competitive and want to do your best, and also at the same time realize that there's a lot of things you can't control, and you make the best of every situation then.
Go ahead.
Yeah, a question from Feisty. Feisty says, Bonsoir, French fan here. Congrats on the win in Chamonix. Courtney, who do you look up to in the sport of running or outside of running?
Oh man, so many. I've front of the pack to the back of the pack. I'm finding myself getting inspired by, almost every person I meet has something, that I can learn from, whatever their experiences are or where they've been or what they've done.
Go ahead.
Great question here from Mark. Mark says, Courtney, you literally seemed shocked when you won. The surprise seemed genuine. When did you realize and how did you feel when you won on the biggest stage of ultra running?
I didn't let myself really soak that in until I was running through the streets of Chamonix. Just because leading into it, those last miles, you don't know what's going to happen. So I didn't let myself realize it until those streets. And then when I finally crossed the line, it was, kind of disbelief. I would never have guessed that would have happened.
Question from Casey in the chat room. Casey says, Courtney, how was winning UTMB compared to winning Western States? Was one more monumental than the other?
I don't know. They're both special. And both great experiences that I won't forget.
I'm actually really curious because it's so easy to ask the questions about the pain cave and the dark places and all the things that you work through to get to that finish. But in a race like UTMB, you're surrounded by such beauty, such natural beauty and amazing people. You visit so many different villages and towns and townships, and you get to experience so much of that region. Do you have any favorite moments or favorite interactions that you had while you were out there that maybe you can remember that will stick with you as sort of your first experience?
Yeah, I think standing on the start line with the people that I was sharing that moment with, I won't forget. I got to share the first couple hours with Mimi Kotka, who's a Solomon runner as well, and has become a good friend over the past year or so. And then I had sunrise on a mountain that I think that was by far my favorite, like, scenic part of the race. We'd been climbing forever, and finally the light was coming through where we could turn off our headlamps, and it was absolutely stunning. And having spent, the whole first part of the race in the dark, basically, it was cool to finally see the type of mountains and views that we had been running through all night.
Right. And that's my biggest thing is, like, you start the race at 6 p.m. You get, of course, the region, you're standing in the valley and all that sort of stuff, but then you run into the night and you have to wait till the next morning to, like, see these giant mountain passes and stuff that you're running across. It must be a really unique experience to see the sunrise. I am so happy that you were able to join us tonight, Courtney. And I, of course, want to ask what's next. And I don't even know if you've had a chance to process crushing UTMB. Has that sunk in? Has your days been any different? Like, does Kevin come down and put a crown or anything? Like, high fives every morning? Like, what's going on in the household? Like, how?
Oh man, I gotta talk to him about that.
Does he make you pancakes every morning? Just like
great suggestions.
Yeah.
No, it's still soaking in, and enjoying that it happened and the memories from it, and excited, to keep just moving forward through the year.
Do you have any plans for the rest of the year as far as towing the line, or is it at this point your summer was kind of the big thing, and at this point it's just celebration?
The 24-hour World Championships are this year, so those are at the end of October, and I'll be competing with the U.S. women's team there.
Hell yeah!
Yeah,
Which
we've got a
reminds me,
great team.
It looks dominant this year. Are you anticipating maybe going back to Big's backyard or making an appearance at one of the gnarliest stages next year? Is that on your list at the Barkley or anything like that? I know you get asked that every time.
Unfortunately, this year, Bigs and 24-hour World Championships are basically the same time.
Same time.
So I won't be able to do laps around the backyard, but I'm excited to see what his list of entrants can throw down this year. I think it'll be really cool.
There's always surprise names. You're like, what? This is going to get good. Yeah. It's always fun.
And the race format is just, all you have to do is keep going.
That's it.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and Barkley's for sure on my list of races I would love to try.
Hell yeah. Let's get to a couple more live questions.
Just one comment in the chat room here from Jenny. Jenny says, Courtney, your accomplishments inspire me. Your work opens women's minds to the possibility of not only being the best in women's races, but the best overall. You are amazing. Thank you for your work. And I think a lot of women out there in sport resonate with Jenny's comments as well. So it's really cool to see you out there just like crushing overall.
Thank you.
We are so honored to have you on our show, Courtney. Welcome you back to the show, and we really appreciate you taking the time tonight to join us. And I know a lot of our live viewers will have additional questions. We'll have you obviously in our after show tonight, which is about 10 or 15 minutes more for our Patreon subscribers, and anyone's welcome to join us there. But if someone wants to ask those questions or follow you on social and all that sort of stuff, where can they find you? Where can they reach out or see what's going on in Courtney's world?
Yeah, on Instagram at Courtney Dauwalter, Twitter at Court Dauwalter, and Facebook Courtney Dauwalter. Would love to hear from you.
Our guest tonight is the incredible Courtney Dauwalter. It's so easy to just get giddy because she's changing the face of the sport, and
you saw me.
That's the story that we'll talk a little bit in the after show. I think we'll share with everyone how we saw Courtney at Western States and how our seeing her again in person played out. We'll do that for our Patreon subscribers. If you would like to join us for our after show tonight, we would love to have you. All you got to do is go to patreon.com/thegingerrunner for as little as $1 a month. You get access to all of our after shows. They're like 10 or 15 minute long shows with our guests afterwards, where our Patreon supporters get to ask those questions that didn't get asked, interact with our guests. It's really fun. You get access to the archives and the future episodes. It's worth it and helps support the channel. A huge shout out to our guest tonight, who is just dominating the sport and just fresh off of an incredible victory at the UTMB. It's so great to have her on, Courtney Dauwalter. So please go show her some love on social media. Thank her for being on the show and all that good stuff. Am I forgetting anything? I always do.
GR Crew Member of the Week.
Nailed it. Every week we like to recognize a member of our community who goes above and beyond, crushes a goal, rocks the house, does something unique, different. We like to recognize members of our viewing audience for being badasses, and they are our GR Crew Member of the Week. Kim, who is this week's GR Crew Member of the Week?
So this is a very special GR Crew Member of the Week. This week's GR Crew Member of the Week is the one and only Brian Morrison, friend of ours, amazing runner, father, business owner, race director. A lot of you guys who are local probably know Brian hosts the TNOA 100, which was happening this weekend. And Brian pours his heart into race directing and his job, and he's got a million balls in the air all the time. And this weekend he had to make the super difficult call of canceling TNOA midway because of the crazy storm that rolled through here this weekend.
Yeah, correct decision. We in Seattle, the Northwest, we don't get storms like this very often. It was 1,500 lightning strikes in the evening, which is like a record for our region.
Like 3 hours.
Within 3 hours. It was very dangerous to be up on the top of a mountain, and Brian made the absolute right call due to flash floods, lightning, thunder, all the terrible things that you hear or maybe you have heard about on the news, but Brian had to make the tough call to cancel TNOA halfway through.
Handled it amazingly. Got everyone off safe. But we do highly encourage you, if you're looking for a tough 100 up in this area, maybe check it out next year.
TNOA 100, TNOA Country 100 is it's a beautiful region of Washington State, rugged, remote, 33,000 feet a gain, I believe, in about 100 miles. It's brutal and beautiful, and put on by one of the best people that we know, who helped us put on Tiger Claw in a huge way too. So big shout out to Brian for being our GR crew member of the week. And we'll do a little shout out to another Patreon supporter, Matt Feldhake, as well, in the post show, because he also crushed something this last weekend, which I think is pretty great. So we're going to be in our after show with our wonderful guest, Courtney Dauwalter, here in just a second. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to Ginger Runner Live, episode number 275. We'll see you guys next week. Get out there, train hard, race harder, and party the hardest. I know I am. See you guys next week.
Goodbye.
Bye.